My name is Jack Krasinski and I make videos about Scream. At least, it seems that way because I've made 3 now. Sorry, it's really hard to talk in that thing. With Scream 6 coming out in a few weeks, I thought it was appropriate to revisit some of the Scream media that people may have forgotten about. And while most of the movies are pretty well known, there is one thing that nobody talks about anymore. A show with no Sydney, no Gale, no Dewey, not even recast versions of them. The characters are just not in it. Today, we're going to be talking about and reviewing the Scream TV series. Embarrassingly, this show was actually the first piece of Scream media that I ever consumed. I only remember watching it because I started watching the first episode the same day I got my driver's license, so I kept pausing the episode to go drive places for my parents. This was the end of my junior year of high school, so I wasn't as media savvy as I am now. Who am I kidding? I'm probably dumber now than I was then. But I do remember liking the show. I liked it enough to watch the first 2 seasons, but then I completely forgot about it until it showed up a few months ago on Netflix. After rewatching seasons 1 and 2 and seeing season 3 for the first time, I can confidently say that this show is interesting. I don't know if it's good or bad, but it's something. Honestly, I'm hoping that making this video helps me figure out my feelings about it. But let's just cut to the chase. Let's get into the Scream MTV series. I don't know what to call it. It's just called Scream, but I gotta call it something other than Scream because then you're gonna be thinking I'm talking about the movie or the 5th movie, which is also just called Scream. Stop doing that, Hollywood. Stop retitling things to things that already exist. That's stupid. This show initially got some buzz by trying to mimic what the original Scream did by killing a young hot star in its opening scene. Scream 1996 killed Drew Barrymore, and Scream the show kills Bella Thorne. The problem was, in the original Scream, the audience didn't know that Drew Barrymore was gonna die in the opening scene. In fact, they thought she was part of the main cast, the main character even. It was a shock to see such a popular person die almost immediately. But the show doesn't try to convince its audience that Bella Thorne is anything other than an opening slaughter victim, so it's not much more than just an homage to the original. I should also note that Drew Barrymore's profile has only grown since her appearance in Scream, while Bella Thorne's has dropped considerably in the short time since this show aired. Obviously, there was no way for the creators to know that would happen, but I think her inclusion is 100% gonna date it the further away we get from its premiere. The opening scene kind of serves as a marker for the entire show, trying to do what the original Scream did, just not as good. A lot of the problems come down to the most basic aspect of the show, the fact that it is a show and not a movie. In the first episode, the obligatory horror geek character Noah points out that slashers can't work as TV shows.
You have American Horror Story, you have Bates Motel, Hannibal.
What about Texas Chainsaw or Halloween?
Those are slasher movies. So, you can't do a slasher movie as a TV series.
And even though I don't think it was intended this way, he's 100% right. Slasher movies have a very specific pace to them, a pace I like to call the high-altitude topographical map pace. I promise I'll come up with a better name, but that's all I got right now. The pace of a slasher film is defined by the number of kills and the amount of time between those kills. It kind of works like the lines on a topographical map do as the altitude rises. As we get higher into the atmosphere, the lines get closer together, and as we get closer to the conclusion of the movie, the kills get closer together. You normally start off with maybe 1 or 2 kills, and then you get some time to catch up. But as the movie continues, the kills get closer and closer and closer together until we're in all-out bloodbath territory. The problem with this show is it doesn't try to replicate this pacing at all. And I don't know if it could if it wanted to. By their very nature, TV shows have more downtime than movies, which is normally a good thing. But slashers are designed to heighten suspense and increase adrenaline by constantly turning up the pace until the killer is beaten. It makes the killer feel unstoppable and the victims all the more helpless. This show just has too much empty space to be considered a slasher. The only way I think they could replicate the pace is by having an absolutely massive cast so that one person or 2 people could be killed every single episode. but that's kind of unfeasible, especially for a low-budget horror show on MTV, which I don't think pulls in any money anymore because it's MTV. Season 3 attempted a shorter 6-episode story, which I thought would work, but honestly, it still doesn't feel like a slasher. But the real question is, even if it doesn't feel like a slasher movie, is it still a quality Scream story? Well, let's go through the show season by season and find out. Right off the bat, there's a lot I like about the first season of the show. First, the motivation of the killer is based around a murder spree that occurred about 20 years prior in the show's timeline. It turns out later that the original serial killer had a close personal relationship with our main character Emma's mother, making Emma a target of the new killer. I absolutely love the idea of the plot of this show being essentially the ramifications of a slasher movie that we didn't get to see. Cause that's who Brandon James was, a slasher villain. He wore a mask, he was deformed, he hunted teenagers, but unlike the rest of his slasher comrades and 90% of Reddit, he wasn't a virgin. Overall, setting the story in a town defined by a slasher is awesome. It allows us to see the consequences of these stories that we don't normally get to witness. Let's get into some characters. The ones I liked: Noah, Riley, Piper, and Audrey. John Carna and Bex Taylor Klaus do an amazing job of selling Noah and Audrey's friendship. More than anybody else in the show, they feel like they've been friends for years. They have fantastic chemistry. Noah also happens to be my favorite obligatory horror nerd character who knows everything about every serial killer ever in the entirety of the Scream franchise. It's probably because he's given almost 24-hour-long episodes to develop, but I also just think he plays that type of character well, and the show deliberately breaks a lot of tropes associated with it. Like, for example, he has sex. Like, that's great. Good on, again, so many people having sex that don't normally have sex. Good on you guys. Good job. And John Carna has sex with like 2 really attractive women. Actually, no, just 1. Because the other one, we'll get into that. Audrey is also a fantastic character in her own right, but season 2 kind of ruins her. We'll also get into that in a minute. Riley is really fun and super charismatic as the hot girl who is secretly a nerd, which is also a trope, but the show handles it really well. Pairing her up with Noah was a fantastic choice that would have been absolutely amazing if they let her live past episode 3. Seriously, she's like the death I'm most sad about. She was such a cool character, and then she just dies, and Noah gets screwed over. As we'll see, happens a lot. And Piper is a pretty damn good villain, but we're gonna touch on her later. I'm sorry, I keep saying we're doing stuff later. I promise, just keep watching the video, you'll get to all of it. The characters I wasn't impressed by were Emma, Kieran, Will, and Brooke. Emma is a very disappointing character. I was excited to get a more in-depth look at a Sidney Prescott-like character, but it just didn't materialize. Emma gets to do a lot in the show, and she goes through a lot as well, but it feels like the writers forgot to give her any personality. There's nothing to her besides her trauma and like kinda being a popular girl. Willa Fitzgerald does her best with what she's given, but Emma unfortunately just isn't much. She doesn't have the spunk of Sidney Prescott. Kieran falls in the same boat as a character who the writers forgot to give any character. Until he's revealed to be the killer of season 2, there's not much to him other than his CW-esque sexy mysteriousness. I thought Brooke could have evolved into a really fantastic riff on the classic mean girl trope, but unfortunately she never grew past her relationships with her brother and father, which is a fate a lot of characters like her suffer from. Hey white male writers, stop doing that. Let female characters just be characters. They don't need to be attached to a man. Hashtag feminism. Will sucks, but he doesn't suck enough for me to hate him, which makes him boring. But he does get quite possibly the most brutal kill in the entire Scream franchise. I can't even show it to you, that's how bad it was. And the characters I hated: Jake and Seth. Jake is the world's biggest douchebag, and his character would be completely intolerable if the actor wasn't so good at playing a douchebag. I swear to God, they try to give this guy like 6 chances at redemption and not a single one of them sticks. And then Kieran just kills him at the beginning of season 2 with a fucking scythe. I think they were trying to play with our expectations by having the cocky dickhead character actually survive the entire first season, but it didn't work because I wanted him to die. And Seth Branson is a statutory rapist, so fuck him. Here's a few other little details that I found pretty cool. If you have to take away the inherent goofiness of the Ghostface mask, this is the best way to do it. I always loved that the Ghostface costume in Scream was just a cheap Halloween getup, but I love that this show chose to go the exact opposite direction. Making the mask Brandon James's and giving it a little bit of history really worked for the tone of the show. Not to mention, it's just creepy as fuck. Like, if I saw that in the middle of the night, I would run the other way. I'd jump off a cliff before running into that guy. Also, the Ghostface voice that calls Emma and the other characters really grew on me throughout the first 2 seasons. It's not Roger L. Jackson, but it works because we hear it a lot more. Here, listen.
No, you listen, you little bitch. You hang up on me again, I'll gut you like a fish, understand?
Yeah. You're two-faced friends. You're fraud of a family. You're whore of a mother. It all started with her, Emma.
That's not bad, right? Like, it's not Roger L. Jackson, but it's still pretty damn good. As for the big reveal, I think Piper was a great villain. I like that her backstory was essentially just Romans from Scream 3, Roman Gang. Having her be the lost love child between Emma's mother and Brandon James was just an amazing twist. And once she revealed herself, her performance was appropriately unhinged.
Hey sis, surprise.
I just wish we got more time with her. I think she has the shortest amount of time between reveal and death in the entire Scream franchise, which sucks because if she had been given more time, she 100% could have been one of the top 5 ghost faces in my opinion. Okay, here we are, back in the math corner for the first time in like 2 years, but we needed it because I decided that I was actually going to prove that this was the shortest time between reveal and death in the Scream franchise, because I just needed to do it while I was editing. So here we are. I went through, most of the movies were free, which was very nice. I did have to pay $4 for Scream 5, but that's fine. Went through all the seasons of the show, and I just calculated the time between the reveal of the killers and their death. And just to make things clear, it has to be the reveal of the last killer, which gets kind of complicated later down the line, but let's go through this. Okay, so in Scream 1, Stu is revealed at 1 hour and 31 minutes and 1 second into the movie. And then Billy is killed for the second time after he wakes up at 1 hour, 42 minutes and 35 seconds. Meaning that their whole interaction, the whole time between reveal and kill is 11 minutes and 34 seconds, which will be kind of a running theme. In Scream 2, Mrs. Loomis is revealed at 1 hour, 40 minutes, and 3 seconds. And then Timothy Oliphant, who's the actor's name, I don't know the fucking character's name, is killed at 1 hour, 50 minutes, and 21 seconds, meaning that whole interaction lasted 10 minutes and 18 seconds, a little bit shorter than in Scream 1. Scream 3 is easy because there's only Roman. He's revealed at 1 hour, 37 minutes, and 35 seconds, very nice. And then he is finally killed when Dewey decides to fucking shoot him in the head for once at 1 hour, 47 minutes, and 2 seconds, meaning that that whole interaction only lasted 9 minutes and 25 seconds. But then we jump 10 years into the future for Scream 4. Jill is revealed at 1 hour, 26 minutes, and 50 seconds, and then there is a very long sequence because the whole thing where she explains her stuff, that takes a long time, but then she doesn't actually get killed immediately, and she doesn't get killed until they're in the hospital at 1 hour, 42 minutes, and 45 seconds, making this the longest of the bunch at 15 minutes and 10 seconds. Also, Jill shouldn't have died, and Sydney should have. I made a whole video about that, you should watch it. And then we jump another 10 years to Scream 5, where Sam's boyfriend, Jack, no, what's his name? I don't remember. 1 hour, 33 minutes, and 2 seconds is when he's revealed And then Amber, whose name for some reason I do remember, is killed all burnt up and shit at 1 hour, 44 minutes, and 16 seconds, meaning this interaction lasts 11 minutes and 14 seconds. Very similar to the original Scream, which it shares a name with for some fucking reason. Now on to the Scream TV show. For the Piper death, the one I'm talking about, the one I am sure is the shortest in the entire series. Season 1, she is revealed in the last episode at 31 minutes and 51 seconds. And she is killed at almost exactly 36 minutes. Meaning that whole interaction only lasted 4 minutes and 9 seconds. Almost a third of the normal length, which is ridiculous. So it's very, very short. Then, jumping to season 2, we have Kieran revealed as the killer in the last episode at 30 minutes and 30 seconds. The thing about Kieran, though, he's the only one to not be killed. He's actually arrested. So to the point where he's arrested, it's 36 minutes and 35 seconds, which makes the whole interaction about 6 minutes and 5 seconds. But if you take it to his death, which occurs in like the special, which is technically like the 13th episode of season 2, it happens about 2 minutes and 49 seconds into that episode. So if you take that, it's about 12 minutes of screen time. But I'm not going to count that. It's about 6 minutes and 5 seconds for Kieran, which truly is not that much more than Piper, but Kieran sucks more than Piper, so I don't really care. In season 3, Beth is revealed to be the killer at 26 minutes and 50 seconds, and then she is killed at 35 minutes almost exactly, meaning that interaction takes 8 minutes and 10 seconds, which means I was correct. Piper is the shortest in the entire series, not by a ton because Kieran's not as bad, but we don't talk about that, but she's given almost no time as the killer, which is super upsetting because she is awesome. So yeah, that was Math Corner. Tim, I hope you enjoyed that because you liked it the last time. There is one weird inconsistency with her. There's like a scene where her and Will are investigating the killer in a warehouse, and then Will gets knocked up and dragged away by the accomplice, Kieran. But then it cuts to Piper waking up in the warehouse and being like, oh my god, where's Will? And walking away. But she was completely alone. So why would she react like that? Because she's the killer and she knows, she probably told Kieran to do that. So why would she doesn't know there's a camera there. It's weird. It was just a weird scene. Overall, this season feels like it was an original pitch that was molded to fit the Scream franchise. It's by no means bad. Okay, sometimes it's pretty bad, but it's very enjoyable. The kills are brutal, the mystery is pretty strong, and most of the characters have good chemistry. Honestly, had it been a little bit shorter and included Jake's gruesome death within the first 3 episodes, I would have called it a straight up 8 out of 10. But without those things, it's like a 6 out of 10. Not bad, above average, but not amazing. Okay, season 2 has a lot of ups and downs, so stick with me. The biggest problem by far is that the majority of characters don't even know there's another killer on the loose until episode 4. That's a full third of the season where the main premise of the show is unknown to all characters but one, Audrey. Imagine if the characters in Scream didn't learn about Drew Barrymore's death until the end of Act 1. It would utterly ruin the pacing, and it does the exact same thing here. I'll give them credit because the pacing from episode 4 on is pretty good, but it's not enough to save the season. There's also 2 episodes this season which are by far the best this show has to offer. There's one where they're all kind of stuck in the school. It's like a bottle episode, which I'm just a sucker for. And there's an episode where Audrey and Emma, who are kind of fighting at the time, have to find Noah, who's been buried alive. Great episodes, solid TV. But it really sucks, because had they just revealed Jake's death at the end of like episode 2 or something, this could have been a vast improvement on the first season. Let's go over some changes to the original cast before we jump into the new characters. The writers really wanted us to empathize and feel for Audrey because they essentially make her the main character this season. I think Ghostface calls her more than he does Emma, but I don't think there's any excusing what she did. For those of you that didn't watch, Audrey was responsible for bringing Piper to the town, and she knew that Piper was Emma's half-sister the entire time. And she didn't say anything even when Emma was sure that the killer was her sibling in some way or another. And people died because of that. Like, she's an accessory, right? She didn't really help with the killings, but she definitely withheld evidence. And Audrey's big excuse is that she was with Piper when her girlfriend was killed. But are you telling me she never once thought that Piper might have an accomplice, that there might be two people? They're wearing a mask. Audrey, are you stupid, baby? What are you doing? I like the character, and Bex Taylor Klaus is very, very charismatic, but like, that's awful. Like, how am I supposed to root for that character when she did that? Like, come on, she needed to die. She really needed to die. Apparently, Emma is a better person than me, though, because she forgives her, and I would have turned her into the cops. And I hate the fucking cops. Noah, on the other side of the spectrum, actually gets a lot of great character growth in this season. Once again, we get to see him in a romantic relationship, which is great because it breaks his archetype, and this one does last longer than Riley, but she still dies, which is terrible for Noah, and for her, especially because her death is like one of the worst in the entire series. It's like Will and then her. Like, it's not even close. I wouldn't call either instance fridging because Noah isn't particularly motivated by either death, but the fact that it happens twice in 2 seasons is definitely something. It's almost trauma porn. I'm not an expert on any of that, so if you think it's fridging, it's fridging. And if you don't know what fridging is, look it up. It's prevalent. But Noah also has to confront his own obsession with horror and serial killers as a coping mechanism for the horror he's been through. It's honestly the most profound character moment the show has to offer, and it's damn good writing. Now on to some of the new characters. Where Jake is a classic 2000s douchebag, Stavo is a 2010s fuckboy. He even does that little weird face with like the sad eyes and like the cheekbones, and am I just thinking of a handsome guy? He has a handsome face. They show him doing so much weird shit trying to convince you that he's the killer when it's impossible, because Piper clearly insinuated to Emma that her accomplice was someone that Emma knew, and Stavo just moved there. So how could it be him? What? It doesn't make any sense. It's stupid. And when it's revealed that he's not the killer, it turns out all the weird shit he did was just because he's weird. The only reason he gets a pass is because he's a comic book nerd, and I gotta respect my boys. But other than that, he's weird. He's very weird. So he beats Jake, but just barely. Eli is also weird for the sake of being weird. I think the writers brought both of those characters in because it was so clear that Kieran was the other killer and they wanted to sow some doubt, but like I already mentioned, it doesn't make sense, so it doesn't work. And Zoe, Noah's new love interest, is a fun character. I just wish we got more of her, away from Noah, like as a character in her own right. She's kind of just a prop for Noah's story, and that's just unfortunate for a female character to be degraded to that, because again, so many of them are. Hey, white male writers, it's me again. Stop fucking doing that, dude. It's weird. It's weird. Okay, let's finally talk about the Riverdale reject in the room, Kieran. Kieran was a shitty character for the entire show, but his villain turn isn't much better. I'll give Amadeus Serafini some credit for being pretty unhinged once he was revealed, and for having a top tier name. That's just a dope name. Amadeus Serafini. Man is destined to do something cool at some point in his life. But his motivation is so bland that he just ends up being like an off-brand Billy Loomis. Also, having him be the killer makes all the other characters look like incredibly dumb, because now the two killers were the two people who were new in town when the killings started. Like, did nobody think, hey, this town doesn't normally have serial killings except for that one time 20 years ago. Maybe let's look into the two people who are brand new to town. Maybe they brought some element that we don't normally have. The pacing issues, predictability, and strange character choices really do drag down season 2 of Scream, but it's still pretty enjoyable. Like I said, it has those 2 really good episodes in it. It's not going to change your life or anything, but it's a good time. Maybe like a 4.5 out of 10. Okay, now let's talk about season 3 where things really go off the rails. First, I guess I should mention that they made a 1 hour long special to wrap up the loose threads from seasons 1 and 2. Oh, I'm sorry, I meant they made a 1 hour long special that wraps up absolutely nothing and actually opens up brand new questions that are never answered. The only good part of it is the fact that Kieran gets slit open, but that's literally the first scene, so you can just stop watching after that. Now, let's actually talk about season 3. So apparently the ratings for season 2 of Scream were pretty bad, so season 3 is just a completely different story. Instead of following Emma and her traumatized friends, we follow Dion, played by former Blue Ranger RJ Seiler, and the Deadfast Club. Yeah, they actually call themselves that, because like the Breakfast Club, and they were all threatened by the killer at the same time. It's honestly the worst group nickname I have ever heard in my life, and I hate this show for making me hear it dozens of times. Like, it doesn't come out of your mouth right, dead fast. I will give this season credit for a few things before I rip into it. 1, it has a large black cast, which is just something you don't see in horror movies very often, so that's cool. I don't know if they were just trying to play on the hype around Jordan Peele, but it was a good choice. 2, Keke Palmer. Just Keke Palmer. She is by far the best character in the show, and she was a joy to watch. And 3, there was a solid twist at the end that I did not see coming, so I'll give them credit for that. Does it make sense? Not really. Spoilers if you haven't watched it or you plan on watching it. Dion turns out to be his brother Marcus, who everybody thought was killed years ago. Dion was actually the one who died that night, and Marcus didn't say anything because, and this is true, they had switched Halloween costumes, and his mom thought that Marcus was Dion, and he just didn't tell her that it was the other way around. Yeah, it turns out this show is a slasher adaptation of Dear Evan Hansen. It's really stupid, but I didn't see it coming, so I am gonna give them a smidge of credit. You know what I did see coming, though? The killers. It was pretty obvious from the start that Dion's half-brother was gonna be one of the killers. I know he's actually Marcus, but everybody still calls him Dion even after he confesses, so I'm just gonna run with that. And I also knew that one of the Deadfast Club had to be the other killer because, of course they are. But in episode 3, when they're all running around a cornfield, it became incredibly clear that Beth was the other killer. Mostly because she is the only other person it could possibly be without it making absolutely no sense, which I wouldn't put past this show to have something make no sense. They've done it before, as we've already covered, but I just felt it had to be her. It didn't make any sense otherwise. Beth is the horror geek character, so I will give them a little bit of credit for doing something that I always thought would have been cool, but she's just not interesting enough, and the actress isn't scary or threatening enough when she's revealed, so it just kind of falls flat. And Dion's half-brother, like, his motivation could have really worked, but like, he's just treated like a secondary villain. He's not treated like the main Ghostface. That's Beth. And then he's treated like some other Ghostface. His reveal sucks. It's just bad. There's a lot of weird problems with this season. Almost all of the kills are just boring, except for one particularly brutal one in episode 4. All of the direction makes Ghostface look goofy and not scary or threatening at all. And none of the characters, except for Keke Palmer, ever seem to be like scared or even upset by the deaths happening around them. It's really weird. They all seem very apathetic. And I don't like ragging on actors, because I think their work can be bogged down by bad direction or poor writing, which this show has, but some of these actors and actresses just aren't up to the task. I really liked RJ Seiler in Power Rangers, but he just doesn't seem like leading man material. And there's a lot of characters that I don't even want to talk about, because they're just kind of boring. Like, there's nothing interesting about them at all. Yeah, unfortunately, I can't give this season of Scream anything more than like a 2 or a 1. It just doesn't work. The production value seems so much less. The acting's not great. The writing's not great. The direction's not great. The first black-led part of this franchise deserved a whole lot better. The only saving grace of this season is that it's short and kind of so bad that it's funny. I really wish I could combine all of the best aspects of this show into one really great slasher show, but even then, I'm still not sure it would work just because it's a show. This whole series is actually a really cool experiment in format and medium. It shows that certain stories are just best fit for certain mediums. Some books need to remain books. Some comics need to remain comics. Watchmen and slashers are best fit as movies. So yeah, if you want to watch the show, go check it out. It's probably still on Netflix, or maybe it's not. I don't know when I'm releasing this. Or go see Scream 6. It looks dope. I have not seen it yet, because it shouldn't be out yet by the time I put this video out. I do honestly think if you're a fan of the Scream franchise, you should give this show a look, because it is pretty enjoyable. I'm hard at work on the next Star Wars rewrite as we speak, so hopefully that gets out to you guys soon, because I'm very excited for my sequel trilogy. So yeah, do all the liking and the subscribing and the commenting, and yeah. Okay, bye.